Before we start with our content, I just wanted to quickly share an experience with everybody here. And I'm sure quite a few of you would be able to relate to it. A few months ago, one of our senior exec at Slack reached out to me and pinged me and asked me a question. He said, hey, Apun, can you tell me, why did the renewal rate in particular segment of the company kind of dipped a bit in the previous quarter? A very reasonable question. You will expect execs to ask these kind of questions. And I said, sure, let me go find the answer for you. But when I went down to find this answer, I realized that very quickly I was looking into multiple dashboards, and then I made some inferences, and then I had to ping a data scientist, and then we brought in a subject matter expert, and then three of us kind of got the answer together, and we went back to the stakeholder and gave the answer to the stakeholder. In all of this, what I found that the data was all there, but the path to insights were super manual. What I also found that the data teams today are constantly being asked questions like these. And they're constantly trying to explain dashboards, write SQL queries, generate data, put it in an Excel spreadsheet, and share it with the customers. And they are actually finding it very difficult to scale. What I also realized that execs and business stakeholders today are looking for insights in more like a natural language. They want it fast. They don't want to wait to look at a very fancy dashboard and make their own inferences. They want to get to the insight as soon as possible. At that particular time, something clicked. I thought, why not a business user who could go into Slack and type the same question, and Slack returns back to them with an answer, which is powered by a very reliable, performant data source behind it. I'm glad to say that at Slack, we have been at this journey to bridge this gap. And together, I'm very excited to share today that what we have been doing, leveraging the power of Slack and Snowflake put together to redefine what data operations are going to look like in the future. And not in theory, but in your actual flow of work without having to switch contexts or switch applications. I would also like to implore you guys to think about the fact that with the advent of AI, we are moving towards more like from data as a service, which was a big buzzword not too long ago, to more like data as a conversation in the future. And how do we impact and redesign and redefine how the future data teams and business stakeholders and strategic decision makers are going to operate in the new world for insights. My name is Apun Hiran. I lead the data engineering team here at Slack. I've been with Slack for about 5 years. The mandate for my team at Slack is to build scalable, performant, reliable data products and data solutions, which power all analytics, starting from either go-to-market or to product and everything else in between. I have over 20 years of experience in data engineering, data platform, data tools, and whatnot. And I have been an avid Snowflake customer and user for the last 8 years. From the very beginning, and it's anecdotally, I got to present at the first ever Snowflake conference, which probably happened about 7 years ago. My co-presenter here today is Ryan, and you'll quickly realize he's real brains behind most of the data products that we're going to talk about today. Ryan.
Hello, I'm Ryan Kinney. I'm a principal engineer on the data engineering team for Slack Data and Insights under Apun. I've got about 4.5 years of experience at Slack and maybe 10 years total engineering experience. My team has largely been focused on trying to make data more accessible for internal users and really bringing data to the people, regardless of their technical skill. That's taken the form of self-service analytics, and really Slack-first analytics has been our goal. And of course, being at Salesforce, that means we're interested in agents. And so we've been doing a lot of development work integrating Slack and Snowflake together while also bringing agentic capabilities into the picture as well recently. And so we're excited to share that journey with you today. We'll start by reintroducing you to Slack. We'll then talk about how Snowflake powers Slack's data teams. Then we'll do a walk through our journey along the app development cycle, starting with Midas, then Athena, then Mariana, and finally our newest AI data agent, Aida.
All right, I'm quite sure most people here use Slack every day, either in their office, professionally or personally. But about what I wanted to introduce, like Slack is not just a messaging platform. It's more like what we call as a work operating system. What I mean with that, mean that is Slack brings your people, your processes, your workflow, your enterprise knowledge base, which is all the conversation and all the data that you have already shared on Slack, all comes together. And on top of it, that if you apply AI and agentic capabilities, it just becomes a powerhouse of a product. A lot of our customers have come back and seen significant productivity gains by leveraging the capabilities of Slack, like over 40%. How does Slack do that? Like, if you take Slack, it already has all the people of your organization within Slack. On top of it, you connect your applications, your CRM, your Salesforce CRM, your Workday, your Google Drive, other productivity tools like Jira and GitHub and all of those things. And then you also bring in your enterprise data in form of Snowflake or Salesforce Data Cloud. Putting this all together seamlessly in Slack helps you unlock insights, actions, and you kind of develop a new way of doing, new data culture for your organization.
At Slack, Snowflake really serves as our analytics hub. We've been using Snowflake for almost 5 years now, and it's become the platform that we build all of our tools on top of. Whether it's more advanced features like dynamic tables and iceberg tables, we have Streamlit apps that help us with data processing, and more recently, we've started integrating with Snowflake's Cortex AI to introduce agentic capabilities as well with some of our recent work. But every story has to start at its beginning, so let's start with Midas.
Midas is the first ever application that we built which connected Slack with Snowflake. And Midas is an application geared towards our go-to-market, our sales engineers, our CSMs, and whatnot. And it came out of a real dire need. There was a time Slack's business was growing drastically, so were the sales teams. And we were constantly being asked questions like, hey, how is my account doing? How's my customer doing? What is the usage statistics around it? What's the maturity on our platform? And again, the data teams were constantly like pulling this data out, putting it in CSV files, sending it over to the AEs and CSMs and leaders, and then they would create slide decks for their QBRs or like going and talking to their customers. We did an analysis at that point of time, and we realized that we were altogether spending more than 5,000 hours a month in generating this data and creating these slide decks. And something had to be done, right? We had to build a solution. And that's how Midas came into existence. Midas is a 100% fully automated Slack native application which connects your Snowflake data warehouse to our AEs. An AE can today just go into Slack app and say, hey, give me a slide deck for XYZ account. And within a matter of minutes, Snowflake will process all the information and go populate a Google slide deck and send the finalized slide back to the customer, back to the requester, who is the AE. It has significantly improved our AE's productivity and the time to get insights to our customers.
So let's look at the infrastructure that was required under the hood to make this happen. Overall, remember that Midas Slides is pushing our customer product usage data into Google Slide templates that we've already created. And we allow our AEs and SMs to then use these templates, these slides, to tell whatever narrative or sales conversation they need to have with the customer. We start on the front end with Slack. The user goes, as Apun mentioned, to the Slack application and inputs a few basic pieces of information about the account that they're generating the slide deck for. That information is passed to the application itself, Midas, who then uses the power of Python's Bolt package, which is our Slack API wrapper, to convert that into a request that we can send to Snowflake. On the Snowflake side, we have some customized queries and an API built in that allows us to pass that data to Midas in the format it expects. Midas then pushes that information into our Google Slide templates, populating charts that are already provided there. At that point, we can deliver the completed slide deck to the AE or CSM, and they can personalize it and put any finishing touches that they need to customize their narrative for that customer before meeting with them and conducting their review. In terms of impact, we found that we were creating decks after this in under 4 minutes, whereas previously it could take an entire day to put one of these together. This was saving us over 5,000 hours a month in engineering, analyst, sales, and operations time. It ensures consistent messaging and packaging across the board for all of our sales AEs and CSMs when they have these conversations, while still giving them the ability to customize the slides as needed for their conversations with different types of customers. And all of it's powered by Snowflake data. So thanks to the Snowflake integration and the scalability and efficiency of Snowflake as a platform, we're able to push all of this data in a secure and scalable way. And we can use Snowflake's built-in security so that we don't have to roll our own, like using role-based access controls and logging everything in Snowflake so that we can trace it later when we do reviews and audits. So next, we're going to talk about a different application called Athena. So kind of similar to Midas, we have a process that we were calling customer sales audits. Audits are when a customer comes to their sales account executive or customer success manager and wants to know how their company and their users are using Slack. So you can imagine some things they'd be interested in, like how many messages are our users sending every month? Or how many applications have been developed and deployed in Slack for our company? Well, there's a lot of questions you can ask about Slack usage, and so you can imagine there's probably hundreds of things that they might want to know about. Each time they ask these questions, our analysts would have to go pull that data from our product usage tables, which are quite large. They would have to work with engineering to make sure that nothing had changed since the last time they pulled this audit, and they would have to turn around this information and send it to either the customer directly or the AE or CSM. This is very resource intensive. It's very error prone, and it's inconsistent. Different people might have different queries. They might be using different data sources depending on who was and wasn't informed about changes and things of that nature. And so there's a lot of coordination and collaboration that needed to happen just to pull this for one customer. And so we were finding that we were spending hundreds of hours on this activity as well. We needed a solution, and similar to Midas, we came up with a Slack application called Athena. Athena is, again, a Slack native application. It was built to completely revolutionize the way that we did these customer audits, and it's powered by Snowflake's robust infrastructure. Athena, since it's in the Slack user interface, allows customers to come and request these audits self-service, all on their own, regardless of technical ability. We integrated the validation and approval processes, built them into the application through button presses, so they can be handled quickly and logged for later review. We're able to support 35 audits, so we standardized that long list of audits into a shorter list and automated those audits. And all of this comes with high performance and scalability thanks to the Snowflake backend, which allows us to run these queries much faster than where we were sourcing the information from before, and with more robust logging. And again, we're able to use Snowflake's built-in security rather than having to worry about it ourselves.
So we looked at Midas. The architecture was very simple. You have a Slack app, it queries data from Snowflake, brings it back, and sends it over to the requester. Athena required a lot more thought process going in because now we were talking about customer data, and that means there has to be privacy, compliance consideration that goes in as well. So the application itself in this, that A goes and requests a particular audit, we do a validation if this particular A is actually the right person to even request this audit or not. We do that validation. If that validation is successful, it goes to the next step where the message, the Athena app sends the message out to the security and compliance team to basically validate all the documents that the AE has uploaded in the process from the customer, the signed contracts and all of that stuff. Once they validate it, they put a approval for that particular request, and then the Slack application itself goes and queries Snowflake database, pulls that data out, puts that in a CSV format, password protects it, and then it copies it over to a Google Drive and puts a retention of 14 days on that particular data. The interesting part about all of this is there are 35 plus audits. Some audits can be very fast. It's a very simple query, not a lot of data. But for our largest customers, this application returned billions of rows. And in our previous iteration, when we were doing this manually, this was very error prone. Somebody will run a query, go out, get a coffee or something because that query is going to run for a bunch of hours, then copy the data down into a file and copy it over. So it was very painstaking. But with Snowflake, most of the audits today, like the longest audit, take less than 10 minutes to complete, which has increased the user satisfaction greatly. This year itself, we have had more than 2,000 audits done for customers, which have supported not just customer requests, but like incidents and whatnot. We've had more than 650 unique users who have used this platform. And it's been a great delight. I mean, we do user surveys, and the users of this application are extremely satisfied with the service, the 100% automated service. So in a sense, Athena has been able to create a highly scalable, secure, auditable platform to do customer audits. It has improved customer satisfaction because now once the customer requests this audit, the turnaround time has gone down from days to like a day. From the time the audit is requested till it's done. And it's all done through enterprise-grade security, both at the Snowflake level and also at the Slack application level. So the last two applications that we talk about, Midas and Athena, were very geared towards our go-to-market functions, especially our salespeople and our marketing and other folks in there. Mariana was the first application we created for us, as in the data engineering and the data team. As I was alluding to earlier, that we get a lot of random requests from different people. They come through direct messages in Slack, through messages in channels, through emails and whatnot. And as a data engineering leader, I was finding it very difficult to figure out like what exactly is my team working on today. I mean, how many ad hoc requests are there in the queue? How many projects are in the queue? I mean, project is easy to track, but how many ad hoc requests are there? If there is a reason of a project not like doing well or on time, was it an ad hoc request or not? At the same time, I didn't know that are all the ad hoc requests being addressed and completed and the answers are being given back to the person who requested it. This was also very disruptive because they came in very rapidly and from all sorts of places. And we also realized in the process that a lot of these ad hoc requests could actually be automated, and you don't need to manually work on them. So as data engineers, and as we think about data pipelines, we thought about all of these requests being some sort of, they have to be funneled into some sort of a pipeline. And that's where Mariana came into picture. Mariana became our main go-to intake process for all of the data team. What it means is a user comes into Mariana and requests whatever request they have. It goes into the funnel. There's a process to assign it to a particular engineer, and they work on it. And throughout the scale, we can manage how many open requests are there, what is the mean time to close some of these requests, and how much workload that the data engineering team has today. We have also integrated Mariana with various platforms like GitHub, Snowflake, and also Jira, which is our ticketing platform or what we use for planning for our own sprint. It is powered by data because all of these data is logged into Snowflake. I can go to a nice dashboard and like quickly look at how many open requests are there, how many are in transit, how many are not being addressed, or what's the mean time.
So we knew from the successes of Athena and Midas that we wanted Mariana to be a Slack-first experience powered by Snowflake. But we were also, around this time, entering this AI era that we find ourselves in today. So we wanted Mariana, as much as possible, to be AI first. And that filtered through all the way to her persona. So Mariana was originally conceived based on a project we were working on called Nautilus. Sticking with the nautical theme, we looked for an undersea landmark that was named after a person that we could use for inspiration and landed on the Mariana Trench. And so Mariana got her name. That also led to us envisioning Mariana initially with a mermaid persona, which you can see starting kind of on the far left. Unfortunately, we were a little concerned that Disney might come knocking if they found out what we were doing, so we shifted away from that persona, but we kept in place Slack's playful, helpful persona for the Slack platform, as well as Slack's color scheme. And we evolved our thinking all the way to the image you see on the right, which is Mariana's profile picture today. All AI generated. Mariana was designed to support users of all backgrounds. Anyone who needs an engineer's help can get it through Mariana. So the way that it works is you go to our Slack channel, our support channel, and you open a new request using a form-based workflow. You fill out a few key pieces of information, pretty typical things like urgency and a description and things, and you submit the request. And Mariana receives that request and helps categorize it based on what they asked for. Was there a data delay, a pipeline outage? Are they looking to create a new data pipeline with an Airflow DAG, or maybe some new table or view in Snowflake? Whatever the request might be, Mariana has integrations with Snowflake, GitHub, and Jira, allowing her to not only help fulfill the request, but also keep track of the work for the data engineering team. What does that look like? Well, it allows us to meet our partners where they work. This is our support channel, and as you can see, requests come in through threads that Mariana creates when a user submits the opening workflow. The user provides some initial information, and Mariana creates a new thread in the channel for us where everything will be tracked. We use the messages in that thread as a sort of user interface and edit them as the work progresses so that we can keep a checklist and users can see how far along the progress is going on their ticket. Also, conversation can happen here. So the engineers, the support people, whoever can be brought into the conversation and talk about the solution as they're working on it. As things progress, there's buttons in the thread that users can press. And in the back end, Mariana manages everything like the Jira ticket based on how these buttons are being pressed until the final step where the customer themselves confirms the work was done and closes the issue. This allowed us to meet our customers where they work. But we didn't want to lose the tools that we already had for where we were working. We track our work in Jira, and we wanted to make sure that Mariana was integrated with Jira while not requiring a lot of context switching on our part to support our clients with Jira. Mariana creates a Jira ticket for each new incoming request for us and populates the important fields based on what the requester provided in their submission ticket. You can see on the right, I guess it's on the left here, on the left side you can see a picture of a sample Jira ticket where Mariana populated the user's information and also included it in our current sprint as of the time of this screenshot. Mariana also copies any conversation that's happening in the Slack thread to the associated Jira ticket so that we can review them later for compliance purposes if needed. This would also work with any other third-party tool that you like that has API enablements, so things like Monday or Asana would also work if you prefer those for project tracking purposes. And of course, we're engineers, so version control matters. Any code Mariana generates goes into our GitHub repository. Mariana can create code for new Airflow DAGs, new Snowflake view creations, and other data objects within Snowflake for us. Mariana creates a new working branch, populates it with the necessary files, and creates a pull request, which pings our team members for review. We can conduct a code review the same way we would for anyone else by pulling down the branch and working on it if needed, or just approve it and merge the code, at which point our existing CI/CD systems will deploy the Airflow DAG or the new Snowflake viewer object. This allows our engineers to focus on the important parts, like the code review, and not so much on the documentation. And there's also convenient links back to the Slack request thread and the Jira ticket that they can use for further context if needed.
So as you can see, since we have deployed Mariana in production and the team has been using it, this year itself, we have addressed thousands of requests coming from our customers. And we have done more than 400 automated deploys using Mariana, saving, again, hundreds and thousands of engineering hours so that people like us, like data engineers, can focus on more high productive and high impact work today. This has been a great boost for productivity for all of our team. All right, let's talk about Aida. Aida is our newest AI data agent. And again, going back to my experience that I was talking about at the beginning of the talk, that can we go and have a conversation with an agent and get our answers? And like I mentioned, there are a lot of people who ping us ad hoc, ask questions, ask insights, and we have been still working constantly. We were working constantly to provide those answers. What Aida is helping us right now is basically give self-serve analytics back to our end users, to business users, so that they can find the answers that they are looking for on their own. It helps, again, saves time for analysts and data engineers to focus on high productivity work as well. Aida uses Cortex Analyst and the LLM engines behind it at this point of time. We have built semantic models in Snowflake, which basically power the data behind Aida at this point of time. And Aida is, again, a Slack first native application which connects to Snowflake and leverages the Snowflake's AI capabilities, and it's fully integrated in the flow of the work of any user at Slack.
Wouldn't it be nice if you could just log in at the start of your workday and have all the data and metrics that you need waiting for you in your inbox? This was one of the first use cases that we wanted to tackle with Aida. So we created a metric subscription service within Aida. This allows users to subscribe to any sort of self-service report of metrics they want, all within Slack, and then receive recurring reports of those metrics on a daily, weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis. You can see an example on the left here, where we've included a post from Aida that was DM'd to a user, and it includes the 3 metrics that Aida is supporting here, including breakouts by region, which they selected, and even a month-over-month comparison to the previous value. This allows users to quickly log in and see the first information that they need to start their day. So how does this work? The intake form is similar to previous applications that we've shown, so not quite agentic yet, but you basically select the metrics that you're interested in, as well as any cuts of the data that you want, and how often you want to receive the subscription. Once you've signed up for this report, Aida will send you a DM confirming that the report was created, and then a follow-up DM with the initial report. At that point, you're done. Based on the subscription repetition period that you chose, you'll receive these reports again and again without having to take any more steps. And you can subscribe to as many of these reports as you want. And you can cut and slice them with different categories or comparison periods as well. So how did we make this work? Well, this might look pretty similar to our other slides, but essentially Aida acts as an interface between Slack and Snowflake for our users. Users of any technical background or skill, whether it's a success manager, a sales representative, a company executive, or even a data expert, can submit a request through Aida's front end. Aida receives their request and logs the important information about the subscription itself in Snowflake. It also receives a structured metrics request, which then goes against our semantic models. Those define which tables and columns need to be hit in order to pull that data that they asked for, and we pass that information back to Aida as a structured metric response. We then build that into a report, formatting it for DMs in Slack, and finally send it to the user as a subscription delivery. And of course, in the background, we have a scheduler running that ensures this happens again and again, so that our users only have to go through this flow once per report. All of this is powered by semantic models. Snowflake semantic models allow us to define things like our table structure and the underlying data so that we can pass that information to applications and also LLMs to tell them about our data. We can tell them things like what measures and dimensions are contained in each table and how to calculate metrics. We can tell them about relationships between metrics that have relationships with one another. When we attach these models to prompting and instructions and guidelines, that allows us to do some pretty powerful things. I'd also like to say one important thing that we've seen here that we did is that we've worked very closely with our business intelligence, data science, and our business relationship partners to make sure that they're all involved in this process and validating the things that we put in here. This has helped us a lot because we've seen some other presentations from people who said that they get stuck when they develop their first agent or something, and then they want to scale out that agent to other users, but those other users have different ideas of what metrics mean or how to define certain metrics. And so they find themselves creating the same agent over and over again, but with different definitions. By involving those people early in the process, you can scale out more quickly and add more metrics more quickly because you don't have to keep doing the same work over and over again. So that all starts with the semantic models being built well. But we're talking about agents, so can't I just talk to my data? Yeah, you can, because Aida lives in Slack. Aida is a Slack-first experience powered by Snowflake on the back end, so we're meeting our data consumers where they already communicate and collaborate. You can see an example here where I'm having a conversation with Aida. There'll be a clearer picture in a moment when I do a demo, but here I'm asking Aida what our monthly active users were last week, and I get an answer with the value, some useful links, and a little more context on that metric. This is powered by Snowflake's Cortex AI. And so Aida is empowered by Snowflake to confidently talk data to our subject matter experts. Aida knows our data almost as well as our experts do, because our experts are the ones who taught it. The back end here looks very similar. Our users, whoever they are, can ask Aida a question through a direct message, just like you would a person. Aida builds a prompt for that user's question and attaches the question to it, and then passes it to our Snowflake models. We attach the semantic context from our Snowflake models to that prompt, as well as the question they asked, and pass it through Cortex's AI. Cortex AI then uses or interprets that question in a data format, and creates a SQL query that they can run to get the answer or answers to the questions they asked. We structure that as an LLM response and pass it back to Aida, who then formats it as a DM to send to the user as an answer to their question. But I've kind of skimmed over the Cortex AI portion, so let's dive a little deeper into what's going on there. Now, there's two ways that a user might be using Aida to find out about metrics. In both cases, we'll have their question, their prompt, come in, and hit it with our semantic models to provide the context Aida needs to answer. But we need to classify their question. Are they asking for the value of a metric, or are they asking for information about a metric, something like its definition or what the acronym stands for or how it's being calculated? In that second case, we call it a description. And in that case, it's actually pretty easy because all that information is in our semantic models already. So we don't need to actually query any data. We can just answer the question with the models right away. But what about the first use case where they actually want a metric? Then things get a little more complicated. In this case, when we enter the Cortex Analyst layer, first we classify the question and we understand they're asking for a metric value. We pass that to Cortex Analyst, which generates the SQL query by interpreting the user's question, and then runs that query against our data objects using the context we provided in our semantic models. Once that's done, a query result comes out, but we don't want to just send the user a number. We want to send them an explanation. So we pass that number with the question and the other context to the complete function. Cortex complete, you can think of almost like a generic LLM conversation function. So it generates text that is appropriate for the question and answer that it read. And so you can get an answer instead of just sending them like a table that says 300 under the users column. It'll give them an answer like we had 300 monthly active users and then whatever other context we might have provided in our semantic models. And we can send that back to the user as a direct message through Aida. So now we get to the gambly part. So I'm going to attempt a live demo of Aida for you all. Please be patient.
Yes, as live demos goes.
So here you can see an actual instance of our live Aida code in a secured demo environment where we will start with the metric subscription functionality. So I'm going to create a new subscription. First, I select which grain of metrics I want, account versus team, because that's just a hard divide in our data. I can select then a list of metrics. Let's just select all of them for now. And a comparison date. Let's do a month-over-month report. I can choose categories based on the metrics I chose. Let's say region. And I can ask it how frequently I want to get it. I'd like it daily. Finally, I can choose to have this delivered as either a DM or sent to a channel or multiple channels. If I choose channels, I'm sharing it with other people, so you have to be cautious about that. But I'm just going to select it as a DM for the purposes of the demo. Right away, Aida sends me a confirmation of my request, followed by the report. And so you can see an instance of the report with the metrics I requested by the cuts that I chose. Great, so far. But let's say that actually I didn't want weekly active users in there. That's fine. I can go back to my subscription screen, and now my subscription shows up, so I can edit it. I'm going to remove weekly active users and update the report. Going back here, Aida sends an updated version of my report, and now weekly active users is gone. This looks good, I can leave it active, and now every morning I'll get this report with the metrics updated for the current data. That's helpful, but let's talk about agentic capabilities now. I want to ask Aida a question, and so you don't have to watch me sit here and type them. I've got them ready as copy-paste. But I'm going to ask it a pretty simple question, like what does MAU stand for? Now, I know that means monthly active users, but if you were to Google MAU, you might get some other terms as well, and that could confuse a generic LLM. Because we've given Aida context, we know with certainty that Aida will answer that MAU is monthly active users. We don't have to worry about the probabilistics of it. We can also see that Aida provides a little more context into the full definition in case the user had that as a follow-up question. Whenever we ask Aida a question, we include these feedback buttons so that we can log the responses from the user in Snowflake. We can then review those responses to see what kinds of questions Aida is doing well or performing poorly on and adjust as needed. This one looks good, so I'll say thank you. Now, that's not really a difficult question. In fact, a lot of older generation chatbots could probably answer it. Let's try something a little harder. What's the difference between MAU and WOW? Now, this one is trickier because we haven't actually answered this question in the semantic models. We have a definition of MAU, we have a definition of WOW, but we haven't defined the difference. Aida has to do the reasoning to figure that out. So we're passing Aida those two definitions, and Aida will come back to us telling us that the difference between the two definitions is the time period covered. MAU is 28 days, WOW is 7. Luckily, Aida also provides the similarities of all the things they do similar. So now I understand MAU versus WOW. Thanks, Aida. Now let's look at actual metric values. Sticking with the theme of MAU, let's ask Aida what our current total monthly active users are. As I mentioned before, Aida is going to pass this question into Cortex AI along with our semantic model, and then interpret this question, generate a SQL query, and run it. Finally, it will package up that query result with the other semantic information we gave it to build a contextual-looking answer for us. Now, I'm going to quickly, because of performance, tee up the next question as I explain what happened here. So you can see Aida gave us a response based on our latest data available, which is yesterday, with the number 19,448. It also includes the definition again, in case the user doesn't know, and a link to the dashboard where you can find more information about this metric. And this is a direct link to the Tableau dashboard the user can follow through. For feedback on these metric-based questions, we also include a how do you know that button. Transparency is really important when you're dealing with LLMs. So we have Aida provide to the user not only the interpretation of their question that Cortex Analyst came up with, but the actual SQL query itself that was run to generate the answer too. So whether you're technical or non-technical, you can understand how Aida is understanding you and see what was done. And so if I ran the SQL query in Snowflake, I would get the same answer. Continuing with more complicated questions, I asked Aida what the distribution of our MAU is by region. Aida gave me each region's MAU sorted from highest to lowest. So again, distribution isn't something that we've defined in our semantic models anywhere. This is something that the LLM is understanding because it understands through natural language what a distribution is, and it's able to answer that question. So this is pretty helpful, but actually when I asked about a distribution, I kind of expected a result with percentages in it. And so this gets to one of the sort of weaknesses, I suppose, with LLMs, which is that they can be a little bit finicky with the language you use. So you have to ask very precise questions if you want to get the results you expected. So I've altered the question slightly. Instead of asking about the distribution, I asked it for the percentage of current MAU in each region. And here it's adjusted the answer now to give me the percentages. It's still also linking me to the dashboard in case I need that information, and I have the ability to provide whatever feedback I like. Let's try a slightly more vague question. Where can I find historical MAU? Aida could interpret this question either way, right? I might be asking about the location of historical MAU, which would probably be a dashboard or a Snowflake table. But I could also just be asking for the historical MAU numbers. Wouldn't it be easier to just get the answer? So Aida is going to attempt to give me both. And so essentially what I'll get is a link to the dashboard, today's MAU, and also some historical numbers that might be interesting, including the first value that we have in our data source, and then every few months after that until the latest number. Great. So now there's something interesting that's going on here. I can see that from March 31st to June 3rd, the number of monthly active users we have actually tripled. That's kind of surprising. It would make total sense for me to then ask Aida a follow-up question, like, why did total MAU increase so much this month? But there's a bit of a problem here. This question is a little bit vague, and so Aida is probably going to tell me that it needs more context. In particular, I asked Aida about this month, but I didn't tell it where to start. So I'm asking for a comparison between an end date and nothing. So here Aida tells me it can't answer the question without knowing which month I'm comparing to. Now it's a little bit frustrating, but at least Aida told me what's missing. So it's easy for me to adjust the question accordingly. So now I'm going to ask it, why did total MAU increase so much since May 2025? This is starting to get to the heart of a newish feature that we're still experimenting with, the why question, and we're calling this explain. And so the idea here is when you ask the LLM why, you're opening up a whole new realm of context that you could provide. And since it's a live demo, of course, it didn't give me the right answer. So let's try again. That's probably a connection issue when it gives up like that. The idea behind explain is when I ask Aida why something happened, we can expose different context than usual. Instead of just showing it the metrics, now we can show it things like events, things like new products that launch, or changes in features, or large contracts. We can choose what context to show based on the form of the question. I'm not asking what monthly active users was, which you pull from a table. I'm asking why it changed, which you can pull from event information. And all of this can also be stored in Snowflake, say in Salesforce opportunity records or accounts, things like that. So now Aida has given me the answer that monthly active users essentially tripled over a 2-month period, and the growth coincides with our presentation at the Snowflake Summit Conference in June 2025. So apparently all of you were so excited about our demonstration that you went and tried out Slack, so thanks for that. Now obviously I just created that event for the sake of the demo, but the point is that you could reproduce this behavior using real events that are going on at your company, as long as you have good labeled event data in your Snowflake data warehouse and you expose it to the LLM at the time that someone asks why. So that concludes the live demo. And I'll pass it back to Apun.
Thanks, Ryan. Wow, the demo went much better than we expected. Great. Yeah. So we are very bullish about Aida at Slack at this point of time. We have a pretty big, long roadmap for Aida. Today, Aida supports more than 100 metrics and different cuts of that metric, which are now available to our stakeholders. At the same time, we are experimenting a lot on the why questions, which are the essence of why we want to build this application. And there's a lot of work that is going through that. I hope you guys enjoyed our presentation today, but if there's one thing that you would want to take back today is the fact that data as a conversation is here now, and operationalizing AI for data is something that we need to do today, and to be part of the race that we are in right now.